The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Geopolitics with Ghost. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, the Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. This is Badlands Media, April 17, 2026. And it looks like we have peace in at least the Strait of Hormuz. Or I guess maybe it's the Strait of Iran. Is that what we're calling it now? The Strait of Iran that leads into the Gulf of Arabia. Is that? I think that's how it works now. Yeah, this is it's a good day. It's a day that I think I've been looking for to happen in this pattern development. I recorded the Badlands Blitz with Burning Bright earlier this morning, so I've had a chance to kind of run through this as it was kind of unfolding in real time. But let's jump right into it because it does appear that we have a peace deal, or at least we have is it a peace deal? Trump says that the war is over. Trump says that we have peace and has said a lot of things. Let's pull up his True Social. How's the chat doing? Let's make sure we check in on the chat, make sure they're alive and behaving themselves. All right. So jumping right into it, we have, it looks like this is the last few posts that Burning Bright and I were reading earlier. A great and brilliant day for the world, DJT. That was 3 hours ago. Let's scroll all the way down to kind of the beginning of the whole barrage of peace posts. Okay. That's from the yesterday, the tips. And here. So 5 hours ago. Trump was posting about Tucker being a low IQ person, Tucker and Candace and Megyn Kelly and Alex Jones and all them. Yeah, about all that stuff. And then he says the USA is the hottest country in the world right now. Just a short time ago, under Sleepy Joe Biden, it was dead, laughed at all over the world, but not anymore. Nobody's laughing. President DJT. Then he immediately posts, Iran has just announced that the Strait of Iran is fully open and ready for full passage. Thank you. And so right after he posts this happens with oil. So the price of oil crashes from $87 a barrel to $83.50. I need to check on where it is now, but that was this morning. And then after that happened, an hour later, Trump continues the barrage. He says the Strait of Hormuz is completely open and ready for business and full passage, but the naval blockade will remain in full force and effect as it pertains to Iran only until such time as our transaction with Iran is 100% complete. This process should go very quickly and that most of the points are already negotiated. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Yeah, already negotiated. When were they already negotiated? Because I don't think it happened in the past couple of days, but how would I know? And then after that, he posts, the USA will get all nuclear, quote unquote, dust created by our great B-2 bombers. No money will exchange hands in any way, shape, or form. The deal is in no way subject to Lebanon either, but the USA will separately work with Lebanon and deal with the Hezbollah situation in an appropriate manner. Israel will not be bombing Lebanon any longer. They are prohibited from doing so by the USA. Enough is enough. Thank you, President DJT. Okay, so before we go to the next post, because I think he's signaling or targeting adversaries right now with this one, of course, being Netanyahu. Let's cut to Bannon and get his take, because I think that he had a good little clip on that this morning. Okay, so it's like a 4.5 minute clip, but it's well worth it.
Israel will not be bombing Lebanon any longer. They are prohibited from doing so by the United States of America. Enough is enough. America's greatest ally just got put on a report. Let me repeat that. And Tel Aviv Levin and Benji Shapiro, the entire Israel First crowd, the commander-in-chief of the United States military had to go on a social media platform to tell the world that we're not playing games anymore with America's greatest ally. This deal is and I'm quoting the commander-in-chief, this deal is in no way subject to Lebanon either, but the USA will separately work with Lebanon and deal with the Hezbollah situation in an appropriate manner. Israel will not be bombing Lebanon any longer. They are prohibited from doing so by the United States of America. Enough is enough. I don't know what could be more humiliating, because in this entire war, the instigators of additional action that have dragged us in deeper and deeper and deeper has been Bibi Netanyahu and America's greatest ally. This is finally President Trump putting a stop to it in front of the world, ordering them, because they've done it behind the scenes before. And guess what? Israel didn't pay attention. They're going to do what they're going to do. Well, you ain't going to do it any longer. You're going to do it. You're going to do it on your own nickel. And you're going to do it at your own risk. This could be, if properly executed by the United States military and the United States government, could be a landmark moment. And of course, Tel Aviv Levin and Benji Shapiro and all their acolytes and Miriam Adelson and everybody, they're all up in arms. They're all going to be over President Trump. He had to go out. Enough is enough. Take your number 2 pencil out and underline that. Enough is enough. Our magnificent military, 18-year-old, 19, 21-year-old kids, men and women, Hispanic, African American, Asian Americans, whites, have delivered this. And it's time to stop the games. The Middle East is a sideshow, and Israel is a sideshow to a sideshow, and it's time to stop the carnival. Finish this and do it like the American military just did it. He gave you a tool, what Scott Besson's been talking about, ultimate economic warfare. You shut them down. Now let's make sure everybody gets to the table. Let's get this whole thing sorted. Let's not be writing big checks. Let's get our money out of here. I think President Trump finally had a belly full of this. President Trump, as I say, when he says no more games, no games. So he just put Bibi on notice, no games. Got to tell you, couldn't be more humiliating. everybody on the Israel First Project, all your pom-poms, nothing could be more humiliating than what the commander-in-chief was forced to do on his social media platform. So all the world saw it at the same time he told you, because they've said it behind the scenes and trying to be nice about it, trying to be accommodating, and you just won't listen. Whether it's bombing, whether it's a whole nonsense about how that we started this whole thing, or about bombing Tehran that night, the oil facilities, or about expanding the war into the Persian Gulf and allowed the Persians do asymmetric warfare to shift the center of gravity of battle after you attacked those gas fields against a standing order by the commander-in-chief. So now he's got to go globally and put it out to America's greatest ally. And Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz and that entire cabal in D.C. should be put on notice. We're not doing this anymore. You're not going to jeopardize the national security interests of our nation, and you're certainly not going to put our young men and women in harm's way, and that's exactly what you guys allowed to happen. And Lindsey Graham should pay for that. If the good folks in South Carolina really look at the facts here, Lindsey Graham will be turfed out.
All right, that was a long clip, but I think it was worth watching, and here's why. Because I see Bannon as I discussed with Burning Bright this morning, I see Bannon as very much a signal setter. Chris Paul said this many times, but and I agree with him. I think Bannon communicates with multiple people, multiple audiences at the same time, as does Trump. Like when Trump says something, I think people always assume that he's just speaking to his base. He's speaking to the American people. I think he's communicating with the enemy, communicating with partners, communicating with different audiences at all times. Bannon, I think, more so than anybody else outside of Trump, when what he says become like he kind of frames in the narrative. In a lot of cases, he'll say something, and then the MSM will basically design their paradigms and their reporting around what he's saying. You know, they'll respond to him directly often, but he basically kind of uses the laser pointer to point at the things, and then, you know, in coordination with Trump, kind of pushes the zeitgeist, pushes the Overton window in that direction. And, you know, so here, obviously, the enemy he's communicating with, I think, is very clear. Netanyahu and whatever it is that Netanyahu represents. There are a few more clips that I want to play. But first, let's jump back to the Truth Social and run through Trump's posts. Let's see. So the last one I read was about the nuclear dust and how, you know, basically threatening Israel. That was what Bannon was talking about. So the next post was, again, 4 hours ago. So roughly probably like 8 o'clock, 8:30 a.m. Or I'm sorry, no, 10 o'clock, 10 a.m., 10:30 a.m., something like that, Eastern time. Trump says, now that the Hormuz Strait situation is over, I received a call from NATO asking if we would need some help. I'm sorry, let me pull this up. So Trump says, now that the Hormuz Strait situation is over, I received a call from NATO asking if we would need some help. I told them to stay away unless they just want to load up their ships with oil. They were useless when needed. A paper tiger, President DJT. So you sticking it right in the eye of NATO and signaling that NATO is just absolutely useless. Why do we even need NATO? We don't. And maybe it's worth sharing, like just showing this headline real quick that I just saw, that I think speaks to this, which is this one from RT. It says, war on Iran likely to delay U.S. arms deliveries to Europe. According to Reuters, U.S. officials have warned their European counterparts that the supply of previously contracted American arms could be delayed due to dwindling stockpiles as a result of the war on Iran. Reuters has reported, citing sources, tensions have been mounting between Washington and its NATO allies since the U.S. and Israel launched attacks on Iran on February 28th, and President Donald Trump branding the Europeans cowards for their unwillingness to join the military operation. Trump has also warned of a possible American withdrawal from the bloc. Yeah, then just goes on to give more details, but this is the same pattern that we saw emerge with Venezuela. The Venezuela model was very much in effect. Trump said this was going to be the Venezuela model. Now we're seeing the proof of that. With Venezuela, we spent months and months threatening a war with them. We built up this big armada on their coastline. We had the special military operation, or we're told, where we went in and extracted Maduro, and that was it. There really wasn't a war. And then Trump very quickly, in a matter of days, a week or two tops, said that we're working with Venezuela. They're our partners now. And now he's at least one time or two times I've heard him say they're now our greatest ally, which I think, again, is like kind of thumbing his nose at Israel when he makes a statement like that, because there was no change in Venezuela. There, Maduro's gone, but everyone else is basically still in place. So yeah, that's a fascinating. Now we're seeing the same thing with Iran. We're seeing Trump make statements about Iran. We're getting into that now. But again, with Venezuela, we remember we pulled the ships, we pulled the aircraft carriers, the USS Abraham Lincoln from the Middle East to the Caribbean to deal with Venezuela. And because of that, when the color revolution, the CIA Mossad color revolution, was sprung against the Iranian government, we didn't have military assets in the region in place to support them. And that was the reason that, sorry, we got here a little too late. And then everyone running the color revolution, the operators all got rounded up by Iran. Okay, so back to the Truth Social. He says, so he stuck it to Israel, then he stuck it to NATO, and then he turns around and he says, "Thank you to Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar for your great bravery and help, President Donald J. Trump." And remember, these three countries didn't do anything in terms of like fighting. Remember, Lindsey Graham and others and Mark Levin and all of them were saying, y'all need to pick up the sword and fight. Why are you not fighting? If you don't fight, then we're going to rethink our alliance with you. They didn't do it. They said, nope, we're not going to do it. We're not getting involved. And so Trump's saying, thank you for your great bravery and help, because I do think they were facilitating back channels and all that. The next one, this is from 3 hours ago. Iran, with the help of the USA, has removed or is removing all sea mines. Thank you, President DJT. Immediately after that, again, this deal is not tied in any way to Lebanon, but we will make Lebanon great again. After that, thank you to Pakistan and its great prime minister and field marshal, two fantastic people, President Donald J. Trump. After that, a great and brilliant day for the world, DJT. After that, Iran has agreed to never close the Strait of Hormuz again. It will no longer be used as a weapon against the world, President Donald J. Trump. And then the most recent one, the failing New York Times, fake news CNN, and others just don't know what to do. They are desperately looking for a reason to criticize President Donald J. Trump on the Iran situation, but just can't find it. Why don't they just say at the right time, job well done, Mr. President, and start to gain back their credibility? And that's, I think, like a signal that he is manipulating the situation and he's running circles around not only the MSN, but I think like the alternative news, like social media influencers. A lot of them who pretend to be his supporters, I think, are actually subversive, and they have no idea how to cover any of this stuff. Okay, so there's more videos that are clips that I want to jump into. And I thought this was interesting. Let's look at where is it? This one. The Iran embassy in Zimbabwe. Okay, so they posted. Where was it? It was. Where did that go? Hey, there it is. Okay. For some reason, I couldn't find it on their feed, but here it is. Oh, they deleted it. So it's like, I guess they must have deleted this post, but it said from 5 hours ago, to the American people, write a message to the people of Iran. We'll deliver it to them and bring their replies back to you. I'm going to screenshot this just in case. Yeah, I mean, these Iran like proxies, their embassies have been posting like dank memes and other just really, really top tier shit posting, all of which I think is hilarious. Okay, and then their most recent post, which came after this, was this one. It says 4 hours ago, bad mood equals Strait of Trump. They're referring to Trump's mood. Normal mood, Strait of Hormuz. Good mood, Strait of Iran. And they screenshot Trump's post that says Iran has just announced that the Strait of Iran is finally open and ready for full passage. Thank you. And that's a good point. Trump is calling it the Strait of Iran. A few days ago, he like a day or two ago, he said, I was really thinking that we should change the name to Strait of Trump. Just trolling people. I don't think he was trolling Iran. I think he was trolling the people who get triggered over these kind of statements. Let me see if I can find. I think I have that exact clip. No, not that one. No, here it is.
The Iranian foreign minister.
No, that's just the Fox News clip. Whatever. We don't need it. Okay. So now we will go. We're gonna wrap up this little segment right here. We'll go look at a few clips of Trump. So here is Trump with a reporter. This is from yesterday.
We have Lebanon and tried to make peace before. What's going to be the difference this time? Me. I'm the big difference. Me,
I'm the difference. I'm the difference now. And so this is from this morning. Okay. Actually, this is from yesterday afternoon, 2:00 yesterday afternoon, but posted this morning, whoever this guy is, what's wrong with this man? It says, now Trump says the U.S. has a great relationship with Iran. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't sharing the right screen. Let's try it again.
No, Lebanon, right? So they'll be working with Hezbollah. What?
Are you still interested in acquiring Iranian oil?
Well, we'll see. I mean, we have a very good relationship with Iran right now, as hard as it is to believe. And I think it's a combination of about 4 weeks of bombing and a very powerful blockade. The blockade is maybe more powerful than the bombing, if you want to know the truth. No, Lebanon, right? So
we have a great relationship, and this is confusing people who went all in on the like, we hate Iran and we have to destroy Iran narrative. This is a hilarious meme. Okay. And then this is the one that I wanted to play from Bannon's show yesterday. So this is this guy, James Rickards, on Bannon's show yesterday. And again, this is before, this is when it was started to signal that we were moving towards peace with Iran, right? But we hadn't gotten it officially yet. So this is from yesterday.
Point. We can basically cut off energy to China. We've always been able to do that. Now, Steve, you touched on something that's a lot bigger than everything we've been discussing. And this is a thesis. It's out there. It's not the kind of thing you can easily prove or disprove, but it's at least possible that what Trump is doing, the rap is, he's crazy, unpredictable, irrational, et cetera, et cetera. There's another view, which is that he's trying to do something that hasn't been done probably since Genghis Khan, which is create a global condominium with Russia. The United States and Russia could control the global economy and by extension, the global politics. And if you say, okay, I want to take over the world, how would I do that? 2 words, money and oil. And that my U.S. has the money, Russia and the U.S. combined have the oil and have an enormous amount of gold between them. That could be something that would explain everything. Why we're looking at Malacca, why we're looking at why we closed the Strait of Hormuz with the blockade, et cetera. And Europe are in complete vassalage. They're shocked. They don't even know what to do. And of course, we took over the Venezuelan oil. By extension, we got Guyana. We took over the Panama Canal. Now we've closed the Strait of Hormuz, which means that we basically cut off the competition. Who's the competition for U.S. Russian oil? Well, Persian Gulf oil. Well, just cut it off. So this is, I'm not saying, Putin and Trump are huddling and discussing this in conspiratorial terms. I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm just saying that it explains the facts.
This is the reverse Nixon pivot. This is what the first term we wanted a rapprochement with Russia and the deep state. This is why you've got the Russia hoax, you got Crossfire Hurricane, the Russia hoax, the all of what Comey and company did to impeach President Trump. All of it. Solomon's going to be on here to stop the rapprochement between Russia and the United States. Evident on the face of it, you're 100% correct. No, you got to.
Well, that would explain everything, wouldn't it, Jim? That would explain everything. And he said the theory's out there that maybe Russia and the United States are doing something together. Where's that theory, Jim? I wonder where you heard that theory from. No, but he did say that he wasn't going to go as far as to say that Trump and Putin are huddling up and coordinating, but that's just because he's afraid his really, really smart friends who've been wrong about everything over the past 10 years are going to, once again, get upset because his takes might be too based, so he doesn't want to go there. But he did mention the fact that he mentioned the Strait of Malacca. So here's this article from earlier this week where it was announced that the U.S. had made a proposal to Indonesia, which is a partner that Trump has been meeting and speaking a lot with the Indonesian president and said a lot of nice things about him. He was a part of that the group of Muslims that met with President Trump last year at the UN that put together the original Gaza deal back in September. So it says U.S. may be eyeing Strait of Malacca after Hormuz, why it matters to India despite comparatively lower direct economic dependence. The United States views the strait through a strategic and military lens. Its narrow width at key points makes it both a potential bottleneck and a leverage point in any future conflict scenario. And they of course be referring to China. So let's just watch this clip. See if they mention if they give any sort of geographic lesson. If not, then we'll do it ourselves.
And well, from the Gulf to the Indo-Pacific, the world's strategic map is quietly shifting. While tensions rise in the Strait of Hormuz, Washington has made a significant new defense move with Indonesia right at the doorstep of the Strait of Malacca. Here are the details for you.
From the Gulf to the Indo-Pacific, the map of global power may be shifting. Even as Washington ramps up pressure in Hormuz, a quieter move is raising eyebrow. A new United States defense partnership with Indonesia. At the center of this speculation, the Strait of Malacca. A narrow stretch of water, but one of the most important shipping lanes on the planet. Located between Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, the strait connects the Indian Ocean to the Pacific, acting as a gateway to East and Southeast Asia. At its narrowest, it's barely 3 kilometers wide, but what passes through it is massive. Nearly 40% of the global trade flows through Malacca, from the oil and LNG to cars, semiconductors, and finished goods. If Hormuz moves oil, Malacca moves the world economy. Washington's latest defense pact with Indonesia is being closely watched. Strategically, it could mean deeper United States access, stronger maritime coordination, and a bigger footprint in one of the world's most critical trade corridors. But for China, this is a pressure point. Nearly 80% of its oil imports pass through Malacca, a dependence Beijing itself calls the Malacca dilemma. The vulnerability is now driving Chinese strategy, from ocean mapping to expanded naval presence, all aimed at ensuring that this lifeline is never cut. And for India, geography is power. Over half of India's trade flows through this region, and Andaman and Nicobar Islands sit just at the mouth of the strait. From bases like INS Baz, India can monitor key approaches, making it a crucial player in any future scenario. Any United States move in Malacca will likely need India on board as a regional counterweight and strategic partner. As the United States recalibrates its strategy, one thing is clear: The Strait of Malacca is no longer just a trade route. It's a geopolitical fault line where the interests of the United States, China, India, and Southeast Asia converge. Bureau Report, NDTV.
Yeah. So, addressing what Jim Rickard said, the moves that have happened here, and Malacca. Anyone who's watched this show knows that we love maps and we love geography, and how important the three strategic choke points are in maritime trade. That would be the Straits of Malacca, the Suez Canal in Egypt, and the Panama Canal. And what do those three things have in common? Well, they've all been at the center of like the news cycle over the past few years. Remember, we retook control of Panama from China, the Panama Canal from China. They were like the custodians or something like that over the Panama Canal. We took that back over. The Suez Canal, and then the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, with where the Houthis are. That's been at the center of news ever since, the Biden administration, and that, you remember that ship got stuck, the Evergreen got stuck there. And then now we have the Strait of Malacca. And you'll recall back in October, remember Trump did his Asia tour, right? Here's October 26th. He goes and does an Asia tour. And where's the first place he lands? The first place he lands is Malaysia. Okay, so the first place he lands is in Malaysia. He signs a big deal with Malaysia that has to do with rare earth. My understanding is that Malaysia was a place that China was using to refine rare earth, and there was some sort of a deal there between Malaysia and China that Trump, I think, interceded on. It says, according to the fact sheets, the two sides committed to strengthening cooperation towards our shared goals to enhance supply chain resilience, including addressing duty evasion and cooperating on export controls. Okay, so that also has to do with the Strait of Malacca, because if we go back and we look at the map, you clearly see that on either side of the Strait of Malacca, you have Indonesia on the south, you have Malaysia on the north. So we signed the deal with the trade deal with Malaysia last October, and now we have a proposed deal with Indonesia. And so those two deals together gives us, I don't know if I'd say control over the Strait of Malacca, but it sounds like we're going to have a much more significant influence over it. And again, if you control the choke point, you don't have to control the entire Southeast Pacific, Southeast Asia, and the whole rimland area down there in the Pacific. Because remember, this entire area, it says right there on the screen, on the last screen, 40% of global trade goes through the Strait of Malacca. And this entire area, the Southeast Asia, is only accessible if you're coming from the Atlantic, Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean, the old world, so to speak, by sea. The only way to access Southeast Asia is through the Straits of Malacca. There's no other way you can take a deep water ship, a tanker. So that's why it's such an important strategic choke point. And so, like Rickards was saying, we're looking at a total revamping of the energy landscape, and how energy is controlled, how logistics and supply chains are run. And think about the big player. Who are the big players in energy? Well, that would be traditionally that would be the Persian Gulf, which is around Iran, Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE. All of the Middle East, the Arab countries, and plus Iran. Then you also have Venezuela. That's a huge player in oil. The United States itself, Russia, and I think that's about it in terms of the really big players. I think there's other places that have oil, but all of those countries have been involved in these narratives over the past, weeks, months, and certainly years. And I think Rickards he's starting to figure it out. He's got a little bit more to go, but he's getting there. Bless his heart, he's getting there. Okay. And so now let's look at how this is being received, or how this moment up until this morning is being received from the perspective of Israel. our greatest ally, right? So let me pull up the Badlands news brief. Okay, so this is from yesterday, and Trump was asked, would you go to Pakistan? Because he's sitting there talking about how much he loves Pakistan and how great Pakistan is, and he's asked, will you go to Pakistan to sign a peace deal if a peace deal is made?
I would go to Pakistan, yeah. Pakistan has been great. They've been so good. Islamabad, I might go, yeah. If the deal is signed in Islamabad, I might go. The field marshal has been great. The prime minister has been really great in Pakistan. So I might go. They want me to.
Yeah, the field marshal has been really great. Yeah. And what's really funny about this is, do you remember where they extracted Osama bin Laden from? It was Abbottabad, right? Which is not too far from Islamabad. So yeah, it's about 30 miles northeast of Islamabad. And so that's where we're told Osama bin Laden was hiding out. And now, which means that if that story were to be true, and I don't know if it was, I think it probably was some sort of a narrative deployment, that would mean that the Pakistani government was lying to us or was in bed with Osama bin Laden or whatever, because it was our own government, I think, hiding him. But now Pakistan is our greatest ally, once again, another greatest ally. And we actually have a response from Pakistan on this. If I can grab the right tab. And maybe I can't. Yeah, well, we did get a response where Sharaf Sharif, I think is his name, Sharif Sharaf, said that he loves Trump, and he was quote posting Trump's nice post about him. I do have the post from Arakchi. This is the foreign minister of Iran. He says, in line with the ceasefire in Lebanon, the passage for all commercial vehicles through the Strait of Hormuz is declared completely open for the remaining period of the ceasefire on the coordinated route as already announced by Ports and Maritime Organization of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I think formally this is supposed to last until as I understand it, until the end of the ceasefire, which is Tuesday. Trump is acting like this means the whole thing is over. I mean, there seems to be no hesitation in his voice that this is happening and it's going to happen this way, and there's no going back now. And when he was asked, will you go to Pakistan to make sure the deal gets across the finish line, he says, absolutely, I'll go to Pakistan. And so I think we will probably see an adventure to Pakistan really soon. And by the way, less than a month from now, Trump is supposed to fly to China, right, to meet with Xi. That's May 14th. What do you think the odds are that he's going to make a stop in Pakistan to sign that peace deal, either before or after? I think that's probably what's going to end up happening, is they'll couple those two things together. Okay, so now let's go back here, and this is from, I believe, yesterday. This is from yesterday. This is Alan Dershowitz, who has been an advisor to Trump. I mean, Trump has consulted with him on things. He's been, even though he's a Democrat, he's been pro-Trump, or presented himself as ostensibly pro-Trump. Connected to Epstein's lawyer. Listen to what he says here.
The goals of the United States and Israel are different when it comes to Iran. And we see that in Lebanon, where Israel's feeling pressure from the president to tone down its attacks. And the truth is as much as you attack Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, they're still around. That's the problem. It's very hard to defeat them. But on the other hand, what other choices do we really have? That's really the dilemma.
We have to continue to fight. Hashem oz li'am yitain. We have to remember that the Jews get shalom only through oz. And so Bibi has to continue to fight, even if it means confrontation with President Trump. Leave that to Americans. We will take care of President Trump. I met with him over Hanukkah, spent a half an hour or so with him in the Oval Office talking about Iran. He was very receptive. And I know that Miriam Adelson talks to him from time to time. I talk to other members of the administration from time to time. There's a lot of support for Israel within the administration, but it's moderated by the fact that, as you say, America has a slightly different interest.
Yeah. And don't worry about Trump. We will take care of Trump. We will make sure that Trump gets on board, right? And so here's the news from news article from, what is this, 3 days ago. And so Trump says Iran talks may renew in 2 days. I don't know if we ended up covering this. Looks like it published 8:28 local time. So we may have talked about this on the show on Tuesday afternoon, depending on what time this broke. But Trump says Iran talks may renew in 2 days, and the Mossad chief, David Barnea, said our mission isn't over until the regime falls. And then you get Dershowitz coming out and saying, even if you have to go into conflict with Trump, Netanyahu, keep fighting. Don't give up. Keep fighting Iran. Forget whatever Trump says. And then let's see. We have... That then leads to getting to the point of having too many tabs open, right? All right. This statement from Netanyahu. So this is going to be in Hebrew. So I'm going to silence it, and I'm going to read the subtitles. So he says, with the ambassadors meeting in Washington in these peace talks, we have two fundamental demands. One, Hezbollah's disarmament, and two, a sustainable peace agreement. Peace from strength to achieve the ceasefire. That was part of a longer clip, obviously, like a longer statement that he put out. But pretty much what he was putting out is he was saying, look, the thing that we're demanding from Hezbollah in order to make this Lebanon situation go away or to resolve is, one, we want Hezbollah to be completely disarmed, right? Give up all your weapons, which Tom Barrack said is not going to happen. Tom Barrack, Trump's best friend, Lebanese Christian man, current ambassador to Turkey, special envoy to Syria, has come out and said that's not going to happen. We're not disarming Hezbollah. It's not practical, no more so than it's practical to disarm the American people. And as he pointed out, he said it's not uncommon at all for the people in this region, southern Lebanon, the far western reaches of Syria, to an average person owning a 50 caliber machine gun. He's like, you really think you're going to go disarm somebody like that? You're not. And he's right. But then the second thing that Netanyahu wants is a complete surrender from those people. Submit yourself to the IDF on our terms. It's just never going to happen. And Netanyahu knows that. He knows it's an impossible demand. They've also come out and said they're not giving up any land. The territory that they have captured from Lebanon will remain theirs. That's what they're saying. Okay, and so let me see if I have... I'm just looking through the news briefs because I have good stuff in that. Yeah, here we go. So I think we went over this. We went over this on Tuesday. This map right here, right? Talking about the number of buildings that have been destroyed. There was this. I thought this is an aerial shot of purportedly like open source. You know what? This quality isn't very good. But let me see if I can find it again on. Yeah, here it is. This is probably higher quality. It's the before after. So the before is March 3rd, 2026, and the after is April 14th. And you can kind of see like before and after. Before there's obviously a village there, and then the after is there's literally nothing left. April 13th. I'm sorry, this is April 13th. So completely bombed out. And a lot of these towns, by the way, are Christian villages. This is Al Qayyim, which is I don't think this is a Christian village, but this is the one that we talked about. I think we talked about this the day before on Tuesday. We had talked about the significance of that village and how it had become the center of a lot of destruction. You can see it right there. And I also speculated that we would see the IDF move up into that area between the Litani River and Syria and take all of that in order to divide the territory between Lebanon and Syria, cut Lebanon off from Syria, which would prevent Hezbollah from moving back and forth between Damascus and Beirut, which is something that they were doing throughout the Syrian civil war. We had the Lebanese prime minister or Lebanese officials meet with Israeli officials in Washington. And here's one of the statements. This is from an Israeli official.
I was honored to sit around a negotiating table with His Excellency Michel Issa, United States Ambassador to Lebanon, and to Her Excellency Nada Hamadi, the Lebanese Ambassador to Washington. We discovered today that we're on the same side of the equation. That's the most positive thing we could have come away with. We are both united in liberating Lebanon from an occupation power dominated by Iran called Hezbollah. Lebanon is under their occupation, and we are suffering from their constant barrages of missiles and terror attacks trying to cross our border.
So again, it's important to remember that they signed a peace deal with Hezbollah, began bombing them because the IDF occupied Gaza after October 7th and then was doing the genocide in Gaza. And so Hezbollah said, until you withdraw from Gaza and end this war, we're gonna be attacking Israel from the north to help out our friends, our Palestinian friends in Gaza. They then reach a ceasefire deal in what I believe it was November 2024 or October 2024. And then as soon as they signed the peace deal, Netanyahu's getting on a plane and flying to the U.S. And then that's when the Golden Pager attack happens, right? That was the Golden Pager. And Hezbollah, as from what I understand, has not violated that ceasefire. There's been a few little skirmishes, a few little firing exchange. I mean, Israel has violated the ceasefire multiple times, but my understanding is Hezbollah has not engaged in any offensive attacks since that ceasefire went into effect. When the Iran war began on February 28th, the IDF immediately began their assault on Lebanon, thinking that on Hezbollah, on southern Lebanon, thinking that Hezbollah was weakened and wouldn't be able to defend themselves. And then they found that Hezbollah was actually still very substantial and was able to fight back to their surprise. That's at least how it's being told. And so as this guy saying, we're living under a constant threat of Hezbollah. Well, they're going up and picking fights with Hezbollah and attacking them. And then Hezbollah is responding to them now. And so for context, here is Israel's bombing of Beirut in 1982. This is before Hezbollah even existed. This is when the IDF first came in and occupied Lebanon. They were invited in by the Lebanese government because they offered to go in there and fight the PLO, Yasser Arafat and the Palestinians, who had taken up residence in Beirut and were operating around Lebanon. And the Shia government of Lebanon viewed the Sunni PLO as a threat. So when the IDF offered to come in and fight them, the Lebanese government said, yeah, let's go. And then, of course, the IDF just started bombing Beirut and occupying southern Lebanon, and they were there for 18 years. That's what led to the creation of Hezbollah, to expel the IDF from Lebanon. So let's watch this video. So that's how the IDF chose to fight Yasser Arafat, blowing up, just like we saw in Gaza. Again, Hezbollah does not exist at this point. They're fighting Hezbollah. Okay. And then this interview is compelling. This is an interview with Ephraim Halevi, I think I'm saying his name right. He was the 9th director of Mossad. And just listen to how he describes the relationship between Israel, the Mossad, Israel IDF, and Al-Qaeda versus the relationship between Mossad, IDF, and Hezbollah?
There have been reports that Israel has been treating wounded Syrian rebel fighters in its hospitals on the border, including fighters from Nusra Front, which is, of course, the al-Qaeda proxy in Syria. Do those reports worry you that Israel's helping wounded al-Qaeda aligned fighters?
As I said before, in a different context, it's always useful also to deal with your enemies in a humane way. And I think that when you have people who are wounded and you can deal with them in a humane way, the considerations as to whether to take them in are not simply whether it's politically useful or whether it's politically
So it's purely humanitarian, you say. So there's no tactical or political strategic...
I didn't say there's no tactical. I said the main consideration, the immediate consideration is humane.
But the tactical issues involved, I mean, you know better than me the phrase blowback. You don't think there's going to be blowback against Israel if you get into bed with a group like Nusra Front?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be blowback.
Why?
Because I think that, unfortunately, the rules of the game in Syria are such that you can do anything that is not possible to be done anywhere else.
Yeah, I think people said that in Afghanistan too. Would you also treat Hezbollah fighters?
No, I would not treat...
Have you not just contradicted what you told me 60
I've not
seconds ago
contradicted,
about humanely treating your enemies?
No. I think as far as Hezbollah fighters are concerned, with them we have a different account.
So let me be clear, you're happy to treat al-Qaeda fighters, but not Hezbollah fighters?
We have a different account with Hezbollah, a totally different account, because Hezbollah has carried out the type of actions against us which preclude us from going into what the al-Qaeda has done. Al-Qaeda, to the best of my recollection, has up to now not attacked Israel.
But it's attacked your number one ally and protector and sponsor, the United States of America. There is a quote-unquote war on terror being going on for 15 years.
Yeah, so there you go. That's the former director of Mossad saying, to my knowledge, al-Qaeda has actually never attacked Israel. And so that's why, back during the first Trump administration, the Israelis were giving aid to al-Qaeda. When al-Qaeda fighters would be injured, the IDF would take them into their hospitals and give them medical treatment and then release them back into the wild. And so the host, the interviewer asks, okay, well, what about Hezbollah? Are you gonna treat your enemies that way? Well, actually, Hezbollah is something totally different than al-Qaeda. And so here's the difference between Hezbollah and al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda / ISIS, because that's kind of the same thing. ISIS is just a rebranding of al-Qaeda, with al-Qaeda teaming up with other, quote unquote terror cells, mercenary groups, as far as I'm concerned. Al-Qaeda, ISIS are international terrorist organizations that were created by Western intelligence agencies, Five Eyes plus Mossad. They created these terrorist organizations to operate internationally and basically be a convenient boogeyman wherever they needed them to operate. But primarily, they came out of Iraq and into Syria to overthrow Assad. That was ISIS's main mission. Al-Qaeda, which was created in 1988, that was created, I believe, to lay the conditions for the necessary conditions for the war on terror, right? And then they get blamed for 9/11, and they get the reason that we have to go into Iraq and Afghanistan, and the rest is history. Hezbollah, as far as I can tell, and I've actually interviewed people who have spent a lot of time in the Middle East and have met with Hezbollah and have met with the Taliban, and are far more familiar with these people than I am. And these are people who, worked. They were doing this as employees of the U.S. government, envoys, that sort of thing. They told me that Hezbollah is basically a localized militia, not unlike what you would have found in 1776 in the colonies, right? In 1778 in the American colonies. They were a militia that was formed in response to an invading army. And then a militia forms, and then that militia, their mission is to expel that invading army from their land. That is their mission. And they receive international support from different groups, including Iran. But that's my understanding is the difference between Hezbollah and Al-Qaeda is that Al-Qaeda, it was created to be an international organization, while Hezbollah was a localized militia that receives international support. And And so, of course, once you start fighting Hezbollah, you're going to call them a terrorist organization. But the main thing, the main, what was I going to say? The main event that is pointed to that where they blame Hezbollah and they say this is the reason that Hezbollah is a terrorist organization is the 1982 bombing of the military barracks in Beirut, where I think like 280 and some Marines died in that. Well, Clay Parikh was at GART. He was actually stationed at that barracks when that happened, and he got up and said, and he's not the first, by the way. I think I have a clip here that I may or may not be able to find, that said that that it actually wasn't Hezbollah that bombed them. Mossad appeared to have foreknowledge of it, and the guys who were blamed for bombing that barracks, I think like 20 years later, 25 years later, were exonerated when they actually had like the court case, and they found that they actually weren't responsible for it. But that event is the reason that we call Hezbollah a terrorist organization, because they allegedly killed 200 and some Marines, and now it's looking like that actually probably wasn't what happened. It probably was some other group, and it may have even been Mossad. So let's see. We have okay, yeah. So I've reached the Kim Jong-un video. So we'll just leave that there because I think we went over the Kim Jong-un video on Tuesday. I do remember that. All right. And so let's see where we go here. We're at 3 o'clock. All right. Let's hit the ads, take a commercial break. We'll come back. We'll reset. We probably have a little more to cover on this subject, but we'll get into some of the other narratives that are developing. Geopolitics Ghost, first hour in the books.
In a quiet town at where beards grow wild and lips dare to crack without permission, one woman has suffered.
Hi, I'm Margie, and I'm Jadriet's mother.
But the world would come to know her by another name, Madame Margie, the moistureless.
Jay came home with a lip balm. It's called Soft Disclosure.
With one miraculous application, her power awakened.
Within one day, my lips were healed. It was miraculous.
But salvation came at a cost. For in the shadowed lands known only as Badlands,
You boys at Badlands are so handsome.
she saw potential,
You're covering up your beautiful faces.
and she made her demand,
Shave them all off,
or face the consequences. Beard oil will not save you now.
and you'll look so much better.
This summer, moisturize wisely and guard your beard, because Madame Margie, the moistureless, is always watching.
Stack Sats with River, the Bitcoin-only platform built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Why River? Zero fee recurring buys. Stack Bitcoin effortlessly, hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly. 3.5% Bitcoin interest on cash. FDIC insured. No minimums. Withdraw anytime. Expert US-based support. Human help plus private client services for big buys over $100,000. Business accounts can boost their balance sheet with Bitcoin and earn 3.5% paid in BTC. It has a top-tier wallet. You can send, receive, and manage Bitcoin securely. Unmatched security with a full reserve custody, multi-sig cold storage, and proof of reserves. Join the Bitcoin revolution at badlandsmedia.tv/river and earn real returns. That's badlandsmedia.tv/river. Your crypto deserves the ultimate protection, and Trezor delivers just that. Trezor offers a secure and user-friendly solution for managing your digital assets. It delivers on its promise of robust security, providing a crucial layer of protection against online threats and unauthorized access. Since 2014, over 2 million users have trusted Trezor, the world's first hardware wallet to secure their Bitcoin, Ethereum, and over 9,000 other coins and tokens. With state-of-the-art encryption and offline storage, Trezor keeps your assets safe from hackers, malware, and exchange breaches. Its open-source design ensures transparency, while the Trezor Suite app makes managing your portfolio a breeze. Buy, sell, swap, and track with ease. Designed with simplicity in mind, Trezor ensures that even those new to cryptocurrency can navigate its features with ease. With Trezor, you can confidently manage your cryptocurrencies, knowing that your digital wealth is protected by industry-leading security protocols. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/Trezor to get your Trezor and safeguard your crypto with confidence. That's badlandsmedia.tv/Trezor. All right, that was weird. Getting a little bit of... All right, welcome back. Hour 2 of Geopolitics Ghost. Sorry, my computer was just lagging a little bit when I added myself to the screen. But yes, we are in hour 2. Today is April 17, 2026. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost of Base Patrick Henry. This is Badlands Media, and we are talking about the turn in this, the plot twist in this narrative, this Iran war narrative. Burning Bright and I, like I said, recorded earlier, the Badlands Blitz tomorrow morning. It will come out at 10 a.m. So check that out. But yeah, I think the thing that I've been waiting for is this departure where we're going to see a split between Trump and Netanyahu. You saw in the first hour, we played the clip of Dershowitz encouraging Netanyahu to press forward even without Trump, and said, don't worry, we'll take care of Trump. We'll take care of him, referring, of course, to the diaspora that influences the U.S. government and tries to influence President Trump. But I think President Trump just used that momentum. He drafted off of that and used it kind of against them. And now, of course, he has ultimate narrative shielding because they're now forced to admit that they don't want peace. They want war. And when they do that, it's going to be a hard sell, especially when Iran appears to be so cooperative with President Trump, which I think is probably what's going to end up happening here. Okay, so there are a lot of other narratives, some of which are connected to this, that we'll start to get into. Let's start with the Middle East. And I have this story. So Iraq seeks to revive oil pipeline via Saudi Arabia to the Red Sea. So we talked about, this is from 2 days ago. We talked about before, I don't know if it was on Tuesday or if it was last Friday. I guess it wouldn't have been last Friday, because last Friday I was at GART, right? Yeah. So maybe it was on Tuesday we talked about this. We talked about the pipelines, right? We talked about how the pipelines were the plan was for Netanyahu to have pipelines run from Saudi Arabia in Kuwait and the Persian Gulf to Israel. Israel would become the gatekeeper of energy from the Persian Gulf. And instead, Saudi Arabia and Iraq partnered up with Syria and are going to be running pipelines to Syria. And Syria is going to become that provider. And then you had al-Shara, Jalani, the president of Syria, the Al-Qaeda like head chopper, right? He went to Germany last month and said, hey, I can be your guy. I can be the one providing oil and natural gas to you, so you don't have to deal with the Strait of Hormuz anymore. And now we have Iraq seeking to revive an old oil pipeline through Saudi Arabia to the Red Sea. And so it says Iraq's energy sector is undergoing significant developments aimed at diversifying its oil export channels as geopolitical uncertainties threaten global supply, particularly with growing tensions in the Gulf region and their direct influence on well-established shipping routes. The spokesperson for the oil ministry, Sahib Bazoun, announced on Tuesday alternative plans to ensure consistent oil exports, confirming the existence of multilateral agreements to mitigate the effects of any potential blockade, according to the state-run news agency, the INA. According to Bazoun, these measures came as the Iraqi economy is excessively reliant on oil exports, with dependency surpassing 90%, pushing the government to seek strategic alternatives that minimize the dangers associated with traditional marine routes. Understandings with Saudi Arabia have emerged as one of the most significant paths through which Iraq intends to revive a historic pipeline that has been idle for more than 3 decades. The step is part of a larger effort to increase the country's oil flexibility. The pipeline connecting Iraq and Saudi Arabia is approximately 1,568 kilometers long, extending from the city of Zubair. I think I'm saying that right, Zubair or Zubair. Sylvia in the chat might know how you pronounce that. To the Saudi port of Yanbu on the Red Sea. It passes through key stations in Saudi Arabia, making it one of the longest oil pipelines in the region. During the 1980s, the pipeline was built in 2 phases. The first phase stretches between Zubair and Quraysh, while the second extends to Yanbu. The pipeline's operating capacity reached over 1.6 million barrels per day, reflecting its historical role in sustaining oil exports. Following the Gulf War, the pipeline was shut down in August 1990. It remained out of operation for decades, despite Iraq's several attempts to restart it. According to data, the project cost over $2.6 billion when it first began. It includes a sophisticated infrastructure of storage tanks and loading terminals, making it an attractive option for reuse if the two parties reach an agreement. This pipeline is a strategic option to export oil through the Red Sea, lessening Iraq's dependency on the Strait of Hormuz and providing more flexibility in regulating export flows. Furthermore, the reopening of the pipeline may boost economic connections between Iraq and Saudi Arabia and offer new options for collaboration to the energy industry, given the rising demand for secure and dependable energy routes or export routes. So there's 2 really big dynamics that come out of this, in my opinion. The first is the obvious one, which is Iraq and Saudi Arabia working together for the first time in 36 years on this pipeline. And remember, Iraq has been getting a lot of anger, I guess you would call it, whatever. A lot of Trump's ire online, which don't always take that seriously, because they elected this very, very pro-Shia government, which the belief was that meant that they were going to align with Iran and they were going to become friends with Iran. But it actually appears that they are aligning with Syria and now Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, of course, being Sunni, Iran being Shia. So the fact that we have a Shia government in Iraq that is partnering up with the Sunnis in Saudi Arabia in order to revive this old oil pipeline, there's significance, a lot of significance to that culturally. I also think that, going back to Jim Rickard's comments on Bannon show, this, I think, probably rug pulls and subverts the traditional energy companies that were operating in the Persian Gulf, because now instead of the oil coming to their refineries, the oil is now going to Yanbu, right? And now they don't get to refine the oil, they don't get to export the oil. The shipping companies that were making money off bringing the oil from the Persian Gulf to wherever, they're no longer carrying the oil. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of significance to this. There's multiple layers to it, and I do think it's a big deal. You then have, kind of tangential to this, so here's Shara again. Jalani, the Syrian president. Israel has acted with brutality, but talks are not at the dead end. The leader says talks now focused on restoring UN buffer zone, will later shift to the future of Golan. All bases in Syria that hosted U.S. troops now under state control, Damascus says. And I did see a story about the last like U.S. troops leaving. I think I have that. I saw that was shared in the Badlands private chat. 1 second. Let me pull this up. So this, here it is. This is from Zero Hedge. Last U.S. convoy exit. This is from yesterday. Last U.S. convoy exits Syria after brutal 14-year regime change proxy war. Widespread reports on Thursday say the very last U.S. military convoy has finally departed Syrian territory with the years-long occupation of the primarily northeast oil and gas-rich sector over in a mission-accomplished fashion. It brings to a final close the 14-year-long bloody proxy war with which overthrew the Assad government and ultimately installed a pro-U.S. Saudi axis puppet in the person of founding Syrian al-Qaeda Abu Muhammad al-Jilani, now known as President Ahmed al-Sharaa. Hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives in the regime change war, with the country and its economy left in a sanction-starved and conflict-demolished state of ruins. The U.S.-backed Syrian Foreign Ministry declared Washington had decided to complete its military mission in the country. The Syrian state is today fully capable of leading counterterrorism efforts from within, in cooperation with the international community. It said, happy to now be back in control of the domestic oil and gas supply. The ministry welcomes the complete handover of military sites where United States forces were previously present in Syria to the Syrian government, adding that the handover of these sites was carried out in full coordination between the Syrian and American governments. While Pentagon propaganda had for years touted an anti-ISIS mission, the real purpose of the troop presence was to cut off Damascus under Assad of its sovereign natural resources and to arm and prop up a Kurdish Arab coalition called the Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF. All the while, the CIA supported Sunni hardline jihadists who were indistinguishable from ISIS in their ideology in the fight against the Syrian army and the civilian population, which often largely supported the secular Ba'ath government. The broader strategy has long been to destroy the Tehran-Baghdad Hezbollah Shia axis, even if that meant using ISIS as a tool of regime change. Ironically, the process of this U.S. handover of oil and gas facilities back to post-Assad Damascus, the Kurds were thrown under the bus. Their dream for an autonomous enclave, I guess it's called Rojava, once again proved illusory. And in the long term, the Kurds will find themselves at the mercy of Sunni fanatics on the one hand and Turkish state under Erdogan on the other. And so it says, following the U.S. withdrawal, Jilani regime troops moved into Khosrak base in Hasaka Governorate in the northeastern Syria on Thursday. Earlier in February, the U.S. exited the Shadadi in eastern Syria in the Al-Tanf on the Syria-Jordan-Iraq border. The U.S. CENTCOM confirmed the completion of the process for turning over all of our major bases in Syria, but it also said U.S. forces continue to support partner-led counterterrorism efforts. And so if we go and we look on the mind map, stand by for processing. It's taking a minute to load. And sorry, still here waiting for it to load. It's almost there. And there it is. Or it should be there. Come on now. There we go. Come into focus. Sorry about that. Internet is going slow. Hopefully it's not impacting the stream. Okay, so if we go up to the top of the mind map, we have, and I'll talk about these pictures here in a second. Those are interesting. Go up to where we have this Syrian map that we always look at. Right here. Okay, so there's the Al-Tanf base. That's the one that's on the Jordan, Iraq, Syria border. So they mentioned that one. They mentioned the Hasaka base, the bases around Hasaka, right? So Shadadi, that was one base they mentioned. And then they mentioned in the east, where was that base? I think it was the bases up here. But anyway, these are where all these bases are. And so they're saying they turned all this stuff back over to the Syrians, because remember, all this yellow up here, that was the Kurds. So the Kurds controlled all this for the entirety of the Syrian civil war. Right, and then the green here was Assad, with the black stripes, the diagonals, the hatching, ISIS. Okay, so we have that. And then I saw that Jelani put out a statement, a few statements actually. So he's now, he's saying that Israel is being ruthless, and Israel is trying to conquer parts of Syria, and he's not going to allow that. But he also put out right here. He says Syria. This is just the BRICS site saying the BRICS account saying this. The Syria's president Ahmad al-Shara said the Golan Heights in Syria is Syria land and cannot be given away. It's been occupied and administered by Israel since the 1967 Six-Day War. And you'll remember during the first Trump administration, Trump formally recognized the Golan Heights as part of Israel, as like Israeli territory. The IDF has occupied it and basically, controlled it ever since 1967, but it was still part of Syria. So Trump kind of formally acknowledged or formally said that it was that what Trump did is not legitimate, that Trump can't give away Syrian territory. That's not his territory to give away. And so here is him saying that he considers long-term negotiations with Israel in the disputed Golan Heights if Israel agrees to withdraw from recently occupied Syrian territory. And so he says, let me turn off the sound. And he says, this is from yesterday. It says, we are now entering the first stage, which is seeking security agreement that guarantees Israel's withdrawal to the 1974 lines and establishing new rules, either adhering to the 1974 agreement or amending it to assure both sides, the security of both sides. Then if this succeeds, we may engage in long-term negotiations to resolve the issue of the occupied Golan Heights, taking Syria out of its state of conflict and transforming it into a safe and stable environment and an investment opportunity. It is good an investment opportunity and stable environment and an investment opportunity. It's crucial. It is good to talk about investment today within Syria and about ending the conflict, or about transitioning from a state of conflict transitioning from a state of conflict to one where messages are exchanged between warring parties. Man, sorry, these subtitles are just very, very small. Syria has, first and foremost, saved the region from the expansion of some regional powers and the use of Syria as a platform for launching attacks or destabilizing the region. And so that right there, what he just said, I think explains why this guy, Jelani, was put in charge of Syria. That's the whole reason that they allowed Assad to quote unquote be toppled, because like he said, Syria was being used, it was being ripped apart, and it was being used to destabilize the whole region. Because as you just saw on that map I just showed you, Assad only controlled roughly 50% of the country. And these other forces that had taken control of other parts of the country, not only were they threatening, like were they controlling sovereign land, like Syrian sovereign land, but they were controlling the natural resources of Syria and basically stealing their the revenue from it. And so by giving it back to, giving it to the people who quote unquote opposed Assad, giving them control of the country, Trump could then justify turning over all the natural resources to them and letting them, run the show. So he goes on to say, Syria's current position makes it a viable, investment opportunity. We are not speaking in vain. This matter is being seriously discussed by all countries interested in Syria. We are now building relationships with regional countries and with countries around the world, not just on the basis of goodwill, but on the basis of shared interests. The world recognizes the importance of Syria's current location and the importance of capitalization in this significant historical moment. Yeah. And so, I mean, here you have like an Al-Qaeda terrorist television character, in my opinion, talking about like economic investment and shared interest. And I mean, he sounds like a world leader now, right? And again, I think this guy was probably in a former life controlled by black hats, and now maybe he's been free, the strings have been cut on that, and now he has new handlers, and clearly answers to Trump and the Saudis. And so that takes us to Lebanon, like back to Lebanon, because now President Joseph Aoun has made a public statement. Let's see. Let me pull up. I'm just trying to pull up the actual. I only have the headline. I need to pull up the actual article. Here it is. Okay, so President Aoun, he says, Aoun says talks with Israel aren't sign of weakness nor a compromise on sovereignty. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun says his country is no longer an arena for anyone's wars after a ceasefire in the Israel-Hezbollah war went into force. Quote, we are confident that we will save Lebanon. We have reclaimed Lebanon and Lebanon's decision-making power for the first time in nearly half a century, Aoun said in his first speech to the nation since the truce, adding, quote, today we negotiate for ourselves. We are no longer a pawn in anyone's game, nor an arena for anyone's wars, and never will be again. So he's inferring that other people were in control of the situation in Lebanon, whether that means they were controlling the Lebanese government, or they were controlling Hezbollah, or they were controlling Israel, whatever it was. He's basically saying the strings have been cut. He says, quote, now we all stand for a new phase. It is the phase of transition from working on a ceasefire to working on permanent agreements that preserve the rights of our people, the unity of our land, and the sovereignty of our nation. He adds that direct talks with Israel are not a sign of weakness nor a concession. Negotiations do not mean and will never mean giving up any right, conceding any principle, or compromising the sovereignty of this nation. Okay. And so now we have a few other stories that are just connected to this. One of them is this one. This actually just posted, I think, right like 20 minutes ago. It says, most Israelis think Netanyahu should not be country's next prime minister, according to a poll. Can you trust polls? I don't think you can, but interesting. Nevertheless, most Israelis think Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should not be the country's next prime minister, according to a new poll aired on Channel 12. At the same time, Netanyahu would defeat all four of his top political rivals in head-to-head matchups, the poll indicates. When asked to choose between Netanyahu and former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, 41% of respondents said Netanyahu should be the next premier, while 34% said Bennett should be the next premier, and 25% said someone else, or that they're unsure. When matched up against Yashar chief Gadi Eisenkot. 42% said Netanyahu should be the next prime minister, compared to 36% who said Eisenkot and 22% who said somebody else or unsure. When matched up against Yesh Atid chairman Yair Lapid, these are all names, by the way, that I've mentioned before, so I think y'all should be somewhat familiar with them. 42% said Netanyahu should be the next premier, 27% Lapid should, and 31% said somebody else or weren't sure. So he's the least popular of those three. And then there's a fourth one when matched up against Yisrael Beitinu chief Avigdor Lieberman. And so let me just explain who Avigdor Lieberman is. He was Netanyahu's Minister of Defense back in 2018. And he resigned. I think he resigned in 2019, but he resigned when it became publicly known that Netanyahu had given money or when he found out that Netanyahu had given money to Hamas, because he's he's very, very anti-Hamas. He is pro-war, but he's he's not fully Yisrael, but Beitenu is not fully like in bed with Netanyahu, but they have a lot of overlapping interests. And so, but he basically said Netanyahu is funding our enemy and he's giving money to the Hamas, and therefore I can't stand with him. And so he became like anti-Netanyahu after that. And he has been ever since. And so 42% said Netanyahu should be the next premier against that guy, and 24% should be Lieberman. Said, but when separately asked whether Netanyahu or someone else should be the next premier, 56% said someone else, and 36% said Netanyahu, and 8% said they were unsure. So again, this is similar, I think, to the percentages that were out there in 2021, and the strategy how these guys beat Netanyahu was Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett teamed up, and they basically ran on a joint platform. Two different political parties ran on a joint platform saying, hey, we will split the responsibility and we will work together, where one of us will be prime minister for a year, and then the other one will be prime minister for a year. And we'll work together to get policies done that, benefit the Israeli people where we align. And so that won them enough votes to oust Netanyahu. And so they joined the seats they controlled in the Knesset. One party controlled the other party's leader, or supported the other party's leader for a year. And then that was Yair Lapid for 1 year. And then Naftali Bennett was prime minister for a year. And then in June of 2022, they switched over to Yair Lapid, and he only made it 6 months because then Netanyahu was able to facilitate the collapse of his government. And that was when he turned to the really, really the hardcore radical zealots, Itamar Ben-Gvir, Bezalel Smotrich, all of them, brought them into his base, his camp. And then the rest is kind of history. And that was where the government of Israel ostensibly became far more radical than it had been even up to that point. Or you maybe could argue that maybe just the reality of what they actually were doing just became more vocalized and more articulated by its leadership, because they had zealots in the security cabinet who were willing to say this stuff out loud. Okay, so Joseph Aoun, we'll see what happens there. I mean, the claim is that of course, is that the Lebanese government and the IDF are on the same team, on the same side, that Hezbollah should be disarmed. We'll see if that actually comes to pass. All right. I think that almost gets us out of the Middle East, because there is now Turkey. Turkey is now, I think, the last piece of this puzzle, right? And so now we can go back to RT, and here is an op-ed by Murad Sadigzadi. Not familiar as much with this guy. Hold on one second. Just getting a text message from Mrs. Ghost. All right. And the headline here is: the chance of a Turkey-Israel war has never been more real. A recent media frenzy about open threats from Ankara may have been just that, but the slide toward actual conflict is there. The latest wave of discussion about a possible Turkish-Israeli confrontation was triggered by media reports claiming Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan threatened to invade Israel. Soon afterward, however, that interpretation was challenged in Turkey. The specific quote turned out to be an old and taken out of context, with Turkish voices insisted that Erdogan had made no direct statement about being prepared to launch a war against Israel. Still, he has undeniably been escalating his harsh rhetoric towards Israel, including calling it a terrorist state and comparing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to Hitler. Yet even setting aside the dispute over the precise wording, the intensity of the reaction to the invasion threat reports is revealing in itself. It shows that relations between Ankara and West Jerusalem have already reached a stage at which even an ambiguous phrase is instantly treated as a political signal, and any sharp comment can become part of the wider picture of a major regional confrontation. The ground for such a perception has long been prepared by the very trajectory of Turkish-Israeli relations. Okay. And then it just kind of goes through like the history of this. We have talked about this step by step, right, on this show over the past year. And I just realized this is the 99th episode of the show, which is really hard to believe. But again, this is something that I've been saying for over a year now, because I've been saying it since December of 2024, when Trump first came out and said, yeah, Erdogan's my guy. Congratulations on overthrowing Assad. That was all you, bro. Erdogan is definitely his guy in this theater, along with MBS, right, and others. And I said that, you know, going back to this map, God, if this doesn't take like 15 years to, if the mind map doesn't take 15 years to load, and maybe it will. But going back to this map right here, and it didn't take 15 years to load. The yellow and blue down here, and this map is from about a year ago, a little over a year ago. No, actually, exactly a year ago. The yellow with the blue hatching is the area controlled by the SDF and the Israeli army. The SDF being, remember, the Syrian Democratic Forces. That's the group that was like the artificial group that was inorganically created to oppose Assad. And so the territory that they control was along the southern border. And the idea, the idea was that this corridor was going to be established called David's Corridor. And my assertion over a year ago was that the thing that would step in and stop this corridor from being established, which the corridor being a potential land bridge between Israel and Iran for a ground war, would be Turkey. Turkey going in there and working with Jelani and working with the Syrians to shut down this corridor and not let the IDF traverse Syria and then get to the Euphrates River, which would then allow them, I think, to use Kurdistan to get into Iran. Yeah, so I think that's really important. And there's been a lot of rhetoric to that op-ed's point. There has been a lot of rhetoric surrounding like coming out of Erdogan and surrounding Turkey. And Erdogan, I think, has been kind of running around trying to make deals that subvert, I think, what Netanyahu is trying to do. Here's one of them. Remember, Netanyahu went and made that big deal with India, and then we saw what's his name? I don't know why I went blank on the Indian leader's name, but it'll come back to me in a second. We saw him go and give that speech at the Knesset. It says India has restarted. The headline here, this is from last week. It says India resumes high-level talks with Turkey. India has restarted high-level talks with Turkey after a gap of 4 years, the foreign ministry in New Delhi has said. The 12th round of India-Turkey Foreign Office consultations was held in New Delhi on Wednesday, according to an official statement. The event was co-chaired by Sibi George, Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, and Barış Ekinci, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs from Turkey. And the last FOC round was held in June 2022 in Ankara. So it's been 4 years since these groups have met. So this is a big deal. It says the next FOC round will be held in Turkey. Earlier this week, India held talks with Azerbaijan aimed at resetting bilateral ties. New Delhi's ties with Turkey hit a low following Ankara's backing of Pakistan during a military standoff in South Asia in May 2025. India did not invite Turkey to its briefing to foreign envoys on the military confrontation as a mark of protest against Ankara's support for Islamabad. Officials also reportedly flagged concerns about the supply of military equipment by nations, including Turkey and Azerbaijan, to Pakistan after the standoff. Turkey, along with Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan, have reportedly played a role in brokering a ceasefire in the U.S.-Iran conflict. Turkish ambassador to India has said the time was right for Ankara and New Delhi to breathe new life into their diplomatic relations. Modi, by the way, I don't know why the name escaped me, but Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Turkey's President Recep Erdogan in 2023 at the G20 summit in New Delhi, while Foreign Minister last year and his Turkish counterpart had a meeting take place in February 2024 on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit. Turkey is important. Erdogan's important. Syria, Jelani is very important. So Syria and Turkey, I think, are kind of like the two little proxies that are really important to sidestepping this whole Lebanon, Iran versus Israel war, right? And my expectation is that Israel's going to press on. Israel is not going to let up on this because Netanyahu cannot afford to lose anything here. He can't afford to lose an inch of ground that he's taken. He can't afford to negotiate with anyone. He has to just keep fighting because he needs to maintain the public mandate to stay in power come October when they hold their elections. And so now we can spend the last 20 minutes or so talking about a few other storylines around the world that some of which are connected to this. Most of them are connected to this, in my opinion. Let's see. And then where I just saw there was a picture of Tom Barrack talking, but Tom Barrack I saw gave a quote where he said, like, if you go open up a newspaper or talk to somebody in Jerusalem, they will cite fears of the revival, like the Neo-Ottoman Empire. And if you go open up a newspaper, here it is right here. Let's listen to Tom Barrack here.
Respects only one. This part of the world respects only one thing: power. And if you don't reflect power, if you reflect weakness, you are on your knees. Syria is a great example of that. Why is Syria working? Because you have a powerful, strong, courageous leader that people may have not agreed with what the points of view were in the past, but they see him leading someplace. President Erdogan, the same way. This part of the world respects only one thing.
Okay, there's that. And then the second quote that I saw was this one where he says this.
So this is my personal point of view. And I have great respect. President Erdogan is an amazing leader, and Netanyahu is doing what he thinks is best for his country.
Okay, so Erdogan is an amazing leader, and Netanyahu is just doing what he thinks is best. And then here's this quote.
Syria under the al-Shara regime has never fired a shot at Israel. Quite the opposite. President al-Shara has said time and time again, there are no issues with Israel. We don't want an adversarial issue with Israel. We don't want to be at war with Israel. We want to work towards a non-aggression agreement and a normalization agreement. Israel has taken the point of view that the Druze in southern Israel and along the Syrian border are actually cousins of Israel. So the history of the Druze is another tormented topic. So at the beginning, if you remember the El Suwaida incidents, which were very, very difficult at the beginning of the al-Shara regime, led the Israelis to come across the border to protect the newfound Israeli cousins who were Druze. Netanyahu was very clear on all of his words that after October 7th, everything has changed. He doesn't care about borders. He doesn't care about boundaries. He doesn't care about the 67 borderline. He doesn't care about the 74 borderline. He doesn't care about the December 8th line. Syria was brilliant in not engaging in that fight. So the incursions are constant. Israel is coming across those lines every time they see a convoy because there's still no trust between the two entities as to can they rely on the Syrian military establishment, the internal military, the external military to actually create a calm barrier. In my opinion, in our opinion, Syria has been brilliant in not engaging adversarially against Israel. There's no purpose in it. They have time and time again said we're available to talk. I was privileged on behalf of the president to lead 5 discussions, which were incredible, between Foreign Minister Shabani, who's a brilliant young man, and Ron Dermer on behalf of Prime Minister Netanyahu. We got very close. It evaporated. We set up a fusion. We're still having discussions. The Syrians have showed tremendous patience, but in all of these instances, we're dealing with 5 countries on 5 borders, 2 seas, and in the midst we have a war. So it's a timeout from these conversations. We'll get there. My bet is we'll get to a non-aggression and normalization agreement with Syria sooner than Lebanon.
There you go. Sooner than Lebanon. And, you know, for a guy who's been accused of like being like an Israeli puppet, he really wasn't saying, I mean, he kept iterating that the great leaders in this conflict, in this relationship were was Erdogan in Turkey and Jelani, you know, Shara in Syria, and that Netanyahu was just doing what he thinks is best, but maybe a little misguided. And then the last clip I want to play from this is this one. This is the original one that I was mentioning.
The rhetoric between the two, to me, is just rhetoric. So if you wake up in Tel Aviv, you read the newspaper, and what do you see? You see a diagram on the paper of the Ottoman Empire 2.0. The Ottoman Empire is Vienna to the Maldives, right? This is the view that Israel is presenting of what Turkey should be. You wake up in Istanbul and you read the paper, and it's the Greater Israel. Vienna to the Maldives. So this idea that everybody is in a conquest or conquering, by the way, it can happen, right? If you think of now the trade routes, let's forget about the Straits of Hormuz, and we just talked about energy, and you've heard me talk about it before, is going to this, the energy world now is no longer saying, the cheapest and most flexible way is to put this stuff on boats. It is, right? Because if you have a problem, you move the boat. So if you're going to be bombed, you can move it out of the Arabian Gulf to Indonesia. You can't with a pipeline, which is why pipelines have only been utilized kind of 30% of their capacity.
Yeah, so you know, he's interesting dynamics there. Okay, so now I think that we can fully close the book, close the page on that. Now, what's interesting is that we have, as this Iran thing is winding down, we can close the book on Middle East. What's interesting is that as the Iran thing is winding down, we're already getting the next 2 conflicts, or the next 2 like shiny objects are ramping up. One of them, of course, is Cuba, and then the other one is Greenland. So I saw that Trump was started teasing Greenland and being like, "Hey, big things are about to happen with Greenland. Pay attention." You know, he's been teasing. He's been, you know, trolling the Danes, just the EU in general, NATO as well. So here is RT says Cuba, according to the Wall Street Journal, Cuba sends secret letter to Trump. U.S. officials reportedly intercepted a proposal with an economic deal that was intended to bypass Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The Cuban government attempted to open a direct back channel with U.S. President Donald Trump last week, tapping a private businessman to hand deliver a sealed letter to the United States or to the White House. The Wall Street Journal reported on Thursday, citing sources, the reported message, which was ultimately intercepted, was meant to bypass U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who has pursued a policy of regime change on the island. The move was orchestrated by Raul Rodriguez Castro, grandson and chief aide of 94-year-old former Cuban President Raul Castro, who is widely considered one of the island's most powerful figures. The report said it added that the letter bore an official Cuban government seal and was formatted as a diplomatic note. The letter proposed economic and investment agreements alongside sanctions relief and warned that Havana was bracing for a possible U.S. military incursion, an unnamed U.S. official told the paper. The courier, Roberto Carlos Chamizos Gonzalez, 37, a luxury tourism and high-end car rental entrepreneur based in Havana, was stopped by security officers at Miami International Airport, who confiscated the letter and sent him back to Cuba. The paper suggested that the move appeared designed to circumvent U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a son of Cuban immigrants and Washington's most forceful advocate for maximum pressure on Havana. Ricardo Herrero, executive director of the Washington-based Cuba Study Group, suggested that an attempt to sidestep the top U.S. diplomat was downright foolish and bound to backfire, adding that it's worse to go with an unknown and with no personal relationship to the president, which makes it look more foolish. The back-channel bid comes as Cuba is reeling under its worst economic crisis in decades, as U.S. forces kidnapped Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, etc. Yeah, this is funny because the report that we got a few months ago from Mark Caputo and Barack Ravid was that it was Marco Rubio who was speaking to this guy, Raulito Castro, the grandson of Raul Castro, and now we're getting reports that, and again, this is coming from Wall Street Journal, so who knows if Wall Street Journal is telling the truth. But I could actually see this going either way. I could see this either being true or being false. I could see this maybe being a little bit of both, because remember, Marco Rubio represents the State Department, and anything Marco Rubio is doing and communicating, the State Department is read in on, and they're a part of. And my opinion is that the State Department is the impediment to peace, and they're the impediment to getting these deals done, which is why President Trump has tasked, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and others of going around and negotiating these deals as opposed to Marco Rubio. It's not even whether or not you trust Marco Rubio. It's the fact that Marco Rubio is by extension the State Department, and the State Department, once they know what is being discussed, because Rubio's in the room, they can then work to subvert whatever they have planned, whatever Trump has planned with these other sovereign leader, wannabe sovereign leaders. Let me pull up the latest Barack Ravid article, because I believe he and Caputo wrote about that. And so this has been getting teased out for a while, that we're like the next one is going to be Cuba, that we're going to have a war with Cuba. There might be some sort of a conflict, and pull up the latest. All of his recent ones are on Iran, so I thought he had written something recently on Cuba, but maybe not. But yeah, so Cuba, I think keep your eye on Cuba. We're going to see a lot more psyops on Cuba, and then of course Greenland was the other one that Trump had mentioned. So we'll see what comes of that, and then China, of course, because we just got the disclosure that Trump had signed or sent a proposal to Indonesia about the Strait of Malacca, and that's going to be connected to whatever is about to go down in Southeast Asia. I think all that's going to be connected. But again, the surface level, like mainstream narrative, the paradigms are all focused on like a struggle between nation states, a struggle between the U.S. and Iran, a struggle between the U.S. and Russia, with Ukraine as the proxy, a struggle between the U.S. and Venezuela, a struggle between the U.S. and China over Taiwan. I would argue that it's really more about groups within those nation states, like the good twin, evil twin dynamic that Chris Paul talks about, and the good twin and the evil twin being in control of each country, and maybe the good twin in one country helping the good twin in another country take out the evil twin so that they can then take control of the apparatus. I would argue that's probably what we're looking at here, way more so than like one country prevailing over another country. It's about groups within the country prevailing over adversary groups that would have a malevolent intent and are probably aligned with our deep state. Yes. Okay. So now we can pivot to Africa, and that's probably where we will land it. Before we go there, let's go back to the mind map. I just want to show you all this. We're not going to have time to get into it today, but I went on Space Revolution with Jim Okwas on Wednesday. If you didn't catch that, please go watch it. We coined a new term that Jim Okwas' friend came up with, geospatial politics. That will be the politics of space and how like the geopolitics of space, basically. And we discussed two books. The reading material was The Revenge of Geography by Robert Kaplan and The Accidental Superpower by Peter Zeihan. I think I'm saying that right. But this first one, The Revenge of Geography, Jim Okwas has mentioned this book before. Fascinating book. And it goes through chapter by chapter. It goes through each continent and kind of explains its geography and explains how the geography impacted its culture and its history and its development, and why some continents created superpowers and others didn't, why some countries can't create successful nation states and why others can. It's not a perfect thesis, but it has a lot of really good information as it relates to geography, and we enjoy geography around here and talking about it. And so here's an example. Let's see. The Middle East, it's harsh geography. I just wanted to mention, like he says, deserts, scarce water, and mountains limit life and unity. Artificial borders from colonial era ignore tribes and sects. Oil geography brings wealth and foreign intervention. And the geography amplifies ancient division. Now, one of the things that Kaplan talks about in the book that I think is really interesting is he talks about how there's no natural borders at the edges of the Middle East, which is why it's really hard to establish like large kingdoms or nation states. You can have empires, and you have had empires, but the empires kind of come and go in terms of, the management changes hands. Sometimes the empire collapses, in the case of the caliphate. But one of those empires would be the Persian Empire. And talking about how has Iran maintained a 6,000-year continuous history, which is a civilization which has changed hands in terms of management, but the civilization itself has never really been wiped out. And that's largely because of its geography, because it's surrounded by mountains on all sides. We've kind of learned about this more and more in the past few weeks. The more that like the news media has talked about the challenges in Iran and why it's a very hard country to invade. So you can see this is like a microcosm of the Middle East. Iran has been successful because it has the mountains, right? And so for 6,000 years, it has been developing culture and civilization. And there's ruins that are 2,500 years old that show very sophisticated engineering, aqueducts, etc. in southwestern Iran. You don't have the same dynamic in the greater Middle East. However, I have made the argument on this show that instead of having these natural borders, these natural boundaries that you would have with like mountains, rivers, oceans, it's now becoming political boundaries, with Turkey and Egypt and Pakistan kind of becoming the three walls, so to speak, that kind of box in the Middle East and prevent, it's a firewall, not only physically, like geographically speaking, but it's also a firewall, I think, politically, because it has to do with economics, with trade, with controlling trade routes. And Iran is going to be like kind of the crown jewel of the whole thing. While I think Saudi Arabia is really the facilitator of the whole thing, the linchpin, Iran is such an important geographic crossroad because, as I've pointed out before, there's two land bridges between Asia and Europe. One land bridge is Russia, which is like a huge land bridge, right? And then the other land bridge is Iran. Those are the only two physical land bridges between Asia and Europe are Russia and Iran. And so the fact that they are aligned right now and on the same team, I think is really important. And then the Strait of Hormuz will continue to be a very important logistical hub, not only because of maritime trade, but because of Bandar Abbas and the rail system that Putin and the Iranians have built with the BRICS and their Shanghai Cooperation Organization partners. So I think Iran is going to be a really important logistical hub for trade, and it's a very strategic area in terms of geography. All right, so sorry for that little aside. I will post this image to my Telegram and to my X, and I'll put the link in the comment section so y'all can go look at this image yourself. But I would encourage you to go read that book. I'd encourage you to go watch the show that I did with General Quast. And we'll land it here with Africa, a place that we haven't really discussed a lot of. Three stories. The first, British oil giant faces lawsuit over 500 deaths in Kenya. Hazardous waste from 1980s oil exploration in the north of the country was left exposed, poisoning groundwater, petitioners have said. British oil and gas giant BP has been sued in Kenya over claims that toxic waste from oil exploration 4 decades ago poisoned water sources and caused deaths in the East African country. Now, it's important to know that BP is the originally it was called the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, and then it was called the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. And so now they're being sued by Kenya. You know, I'll be interested to see how BP shakes out from this whole like Strait of Hormuz situation. Like, what actually are the economic implications of all that? Are they really the target? They and their other corporate competitors, are they kind of the target of a lot of this stuff that we've seen happening in the Strait of Hormuz? I wonder. So that's one story. I'm just going to kind of rapid fire these last few stories. This one, Burundi minister found dead in his car. Now, this one's interesting because Burundi is one of those places that we've been talking about as it relates to Africa. Remember the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's like that and Burkina Faso are the two places that we've really focused on when it comes to looking at Africa and like the sovereign alliance and things unfolding there. The Burkina Faso being like the kind of like the powder keg of political revolution, sovereign revolution in Africa, and the DR Congo being, of course, where most of the world's rare earth minerals come from, and a concentration of wealth on its eastern border, $24 trillion estimated in rare earth minerals. And of course, Uganda and Rwanda have become hubs of terrorism. M23, ISIS coming out of there, attacking the DR Congo, trying to take control of these territories, trying to seize control of the cities and towns where these refineries are located so that the supply chain of the rare earth can fall into the black market. And then through the black market, they will be laundered back to Fortune 500 companies, Apple, the military industrial complex, et cetera, Sony, all of those companies already being investigated by European authorities for engaging in black market, child trafficking kind of stuff when it comes to these mining operations. But Burundi is right here on the border with Rwanda. You will recall that M23 took control of Goma and Bukavu. These are the two major mining cities where you have these refineries. So all of the mines in the region bring their goods, their raw ore, to Goma and Bukavu to then be refined and then shipped off to wherever they need to go. So instead of having to go out and capture every mine in the region, you just have to go capture the towns, and then all the ore comes to you, and then you can steal it. They then moved south, you recall, months ago to this little town, Uvira, right, which is on the border of Burundi. And now, of course, we have the Burundi minister found dead in his car. The authorities have confirmed Gabi Bugaga's death early on April 16th, while details of how he was found in a parked car remain unclear. The government has said Bugaga passed away in the early hours of April 16th, describing the death as unexpected and expressing condolences to his family. According to several posts on social media, Bugaga was found dead at the wheel of a Toyota 4x4 parked in a palm oil plantation in Kivoga, northwest of Bujumbura. However, the exact circumstances remain unclear, with no further details provided by authorities. And so going back to the map, let's just see where this is. So there's Bujumbura. I'm sorry. And it says that he was found. It says he was found in Kivoga, which is I don't see where Kivoga is. Maybe it's a small town that I'm missing in here. But anyway, there's Bujumbura. So it says it's northwest of here. So somewhere in this region, which is, again, right on the border in between Uvira and Bukavu. So this whole area is like under the control of M23 and ISIS, groups that I think are loyal to the Israeli diaspora. Because remember, it was the Israeli oligarchs who lost control of their mines that Trump took away when he signed Executive Order 138818. That was December 20th, 2017. Took it away from Dan Gertler. The rest is kind of history. Now this minister, who was it? Was it which minister is he? Communications minister, found dead. That's sketchy. We'll get more information. We'll find out about it. But here's the other interesting development, and that is joint projects to strengthen Russia-Congo ties. Deputy PM Alexander Novak has arrived in an African nation for the inauguration ceremony of President Denis Sassou Nguesso. The implementation of joint projects between Moscow and Brazzaville is expected to further strengthen bilateral ties, Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak has said during his working visit to the Republic of the Congo. The minister stated that Russia places high priority on developing comprehensive relations with the African country. Quote, "We, Russia, are confident that the implementation of joint projects and the expansion of cooperation in various fields will help deepen the partnership between our countries at all levels and bring tangible benefits to the peoples of both states." Novak arrived in Congo, Brazzaville on Thursday as the head of the Russian delegation took part in the inauguration of President-elect Denis Sassou Nguesso. And so it's important to remember, this is not the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is Brazzaville. This is the Republic of Congo. And so here is Brazzaville right here. It's right across from Kinshasa. Kinshasa is the capital of the DRC. Brazzaville is the capital of Congo. So Congo is a separate country, right? Republic of the Congo right here. And then you have the Democratic Republic of Congo. Those are two different countries side by side. And of course, this is on the opposite border of the eastern border. But again, Russia has been all over Africa. They've been the ones who've been going around training all these groups to overthrow the deep state and overthrow these oligarchs, the imperialists that have taken over Africa. And so are we going to see Russia now step in here and finally help the DR Congo throw off these Rwandan, Ugandan proxy groups that are affiliated with ISIS that I think draw connections back to Israel? I think that we probably will. All right. That was a lot. Covered a lot. So hopefully that was all insightful. Hit the thumbs up, guys, if you enjoyed my 2-hour rant. And I will hit, speaking of rants, I will hit rants in Boost now. Eleanor 2000. Hey, Eleanor, $50. Wow. Thank you so much. Very, very generous of you. Wonderful to see you in Nashville, Gordon. Grateful always for bringing us excellent analysis of the geopolitical events. Your Rock'em Sock'em can rest for a while now. Yes. And thank you for the Rock'em Sock'em bots, the little bot, little like fighting toys you gave me. My son like loves it. So I gave that to him and he has really enjoyed it. So thank you again, Eleanor. Very generous. And it was great to see you and meet your husband at Gart in Nashville. Keith O'Higgins, Ghost, we need to see your hands during that Bannon clip to make sure you're not going all Jeffrey Toobin during it. Yeah. Well, I don't blame you for asking that, Keith, because it's great to see that these milestones get hit, because I think it means we're closer to the end. The end being Israel saved for last. Bread Hour, $5. Thank you for all your analysis, Ghost. It helps keep my spirits high in uncertain times. Well, I appreciate that, and I hope it does. I'm very encouraged by what we're seeing, and I think that today is kind of a proof of sorts of some of the things that I've speculated, and Burning Bright speculated, and others have speculated. So it's a good day. Rave Daddy 523, Ghost, we talked at Gart, and something like this should help you with your show. Yes, we did talk at Gart. Oh, okay. I like this. A laptop screen extender. I'll have to look into that. Yeah, like portable. If I was able to get multiple screens on my laptop that are portable, that would be very useful. Problem is I move around, so I'm not quite yet ready to set up a desktop somewhere and have a stationary desk. With my kids, it's like I have to move from one place to the other to do any kind of work based on where they are and what they're doing. Thank you for that, Rave Daddy. Appreciate that. And thank you for the conversation at Gart. Nathiok, another person I met at Gart. Loved meeting you in Nashville. Same here. It was great to meet you. And let me just check real quick. Do we have any boosts? Thank you, Nathiok, because I think I'm saying that right. Right? I think so. Yep, I think we are caught up. We're definitely caught up on boosts. All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much. Unknown one. I have one I can send you, G. Yeah, we'll put it in the boosts, unknown one, and we'll read it next. We'll read it on Friday. All right, guys. Thanks again. I got to stall here for a second because I didn't have my finger on the trigger. There we go. All right. Have a good week. Tomorrow morning, Badlands Blitz, the Badlands Substack. Also, go watch Space Revolution with General Quast from this past Wednesday. Go watch every episode of Space Revolution while you're at it. Badlands Media, Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. Y'all have a great weekend.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.